The night was cold on the planet Zenthar. The stone floors of the slave market were rough and hard, and she, just a tiny alien girl with thin arms and cracked skin, lay curled under a wooden table. She had no blanket, no food, no shoes, only a torn cloth wrapped around her small body. Her eyes were open, but she didn't cry anymore. She had cried for many nights, 16 nights to be exact. But no one had come, no one had listened. Her people were gone, taken or killed, and she had been left behind like garbage. Every night she slept on the same spot, near the back of the auction area. No one noticed her, not even the guards. They thought she was too weak, too dirty, not worth selling. So they let her stay, out of sight, out of mind. She had become like part of the floor, something to step around, not care about. The cold bit into her skin every night. Her bones ached, her stomach made small noises. Sometimes she found crumbs near the trash. Sometimes she ate bugs, just to survive. She hated the taste, but hunger didn't care. And still, she never asked for help, because she knew what happened to those who begged. They got kicked, beaten, or worse. So she stayed quiet, still like a stone. But tonight was different. Someone was watching her. She didn't move, but she could feel it. The air felt thicker, warmer somehow. She slowly opened one eye and saw boots. Strange boots, not like the guards, not like the traders. These boots were black, with dust from long travel. They didn't stomp like the others. They moved gently, one step at a time. She stayed still, pretending to sleep, but the boots stopped near her. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it a new buyer? A cruel one? Was he going to drag her out, call her filthy, hurt her like the rest? But nothing happened. Just silence, and then a soft sound, like something being placed down. The boots turned and walked away. She waited a full minute, then slowly sat up. There on the ground in front of her was a piece of bread. Not old, not moldy, fresh, soft, even warm. Her hand shook as she picked it up. She looked left, right, but no one was there. Only the wind moving through the empty market stalls. She stared at the bread, not sure if it was real, but her hunger was louder than her fear. She took a small bite, and her eyes watered. It tasted like food, real food. Across the plaza, in the shadows, a figure stood. A man, tall and quiet, with tired eyes and rough clothes. He watched her without speaking. She stared back, unsure what to feel. He didn't look away, but he didn't come closer either, just nodded once, and turned to leave. She held the bread close and lay back down on the cold floor, but her heart beat faster than before. She didn't know his name or why he had helped her, but for the first time in 16 nights, she didn't feel completely alone. Something had changed, and she didn't know what it meant yet. All she knew was, someone had seen her, and that small thing felt bigger than the stars above. Morning light touched the edge of the market stalls. Dust floated in the air, dancing with the breeze. The tiny alien girl opened her eyes slowly. Her body was sore, but something felt different. Her hand still held the piece of bread from last night. She stared at it for a long time, then took another small bite. It was still soft, still warm inside. She hadn't eaten something like this in months, maybe years. She stayed hidden under the table as the market began to wake. Vendors shouted, cages rattled, and the sound of buyers filled the air. She knew this sound well. It meant trouble for the weak. But today, she felt something strange inside her chest. It wasn't hope. Not yet. But it was close. She peeked out from behind a broken crate. Across the dusty plaza, the same man stood again. The human. He leaned against a post, chewing something, eyes scanning the crowd. Then his gaze met hers. She froze, her heart thumping, but he didn't look away. He didn't frown or act scared. Instead, he gave a small nod, like he had been waiting for her to look. She pulled her head back quickly, confused and afraid. Why was he watching her? Why had he given her food? Humans didn't help her kind. Not here. Here, everything had a price, even kindness. Later, as the sun rose higher, a group of alien boys passed by. They were loud, laughing, cruel. One of them stopped and pointed at her spot under the stall. "Still alive, garbage girl?" he shouted. She didn't answer, just curled tighter. Another one picked up a piece of rotten fruit and threw it. It hit her back, making her flinch. They all laughed, calling her names. Smelly, rot blood, cave rat. She closed her eyes, wishing it would stop, but the voices stopped before she expected. When she opened her eyes, the boys were backing away. The human had stepped forward. He didn't speak, but his eyes burned with warning. He stood tall, his hands at his sides, not clenched, not threatening, but ready. The boys muttered something and ran off. She stared at the man, confused. Why would he defend her? What did he want? He looked at her again and pointed to the bread in her hand. Then he touched his chest with 2 fingers and nodded. She didn't understand the gesture, but her grip on the bread tightened. She slowly brought it up to her mouth and took another bite. His face softened, just for a second. Then he turned and walked away again. That night, when the market was quiet again, she waited. She didn't sleep right away. She kept looking out from under the table. And just before the moons rose, she saw him return. This time he didn't come close. He simply placed a small bag near a crate, not far from her hiding spot, and walked off. She crawled over carefully, her legs shaking from weakness and fear. Inside the bag was dried meat, clean water in a bottle, and a small square of cloth. She didn't know what to do. She took the food, hiding it fast, but stared at the cloth. It was soft, not dirty like the rag she wore. She touched it to her cheek and felt something she didn't recognize. Safety. She crawled back to her place and sat in silence. She didn't understand this human. She didn't know his name or his reason, but she whispered a word she hadn't used in a long time. Thank you. The stars above looked the same, but inside her, a small light had started to glow. It was weak, like a spark in a storm, but it was real. And sometimes that's all it takes to begin a new story. She had forgotten the sound of her own name. No one had spoken it in years, not since the day her family vanished. Here in the slave markets of Zenthar, no one asked names. They called her thing, leftover, runt. To them, she was just a body that took up space, too small to work, too weak to sell, too dirty to be worth feeding, so her name faded like old writing on a wall. Until now, that night, the human didn't leave food and walk away like before. This time he stayed. He sat near the same crate, silent and calm. She watched him from the shadows, her body hidden but her eyes alert. He didn't speak at first, just sat there, letting the silence stretch. Then he said, "I'm Cade." One word, soft but clear. Her breath caught, a name, freely given. She didn't answer. She curled tighter behind the wood and tried to stay invisible, but he didn't leave. He reached into his bag and placed something gently on the ground, a cup of warm broth and a small clean cloth again. Then he looked toward her hiding place, not demanding, just waiting. "I don't know what they call you," he said slowly, "but I'd like to know your name." Her hands gripped the dirty edge of the wooden stall. Why would he care? Why would a human ask? No one asked for her name. Not anymore. It was dangerous to hope. Still, the way he spoke made her heart feel heavy and warm at the same time. She stayed quiet for a long moment. Then, in the tiniest voice, rough from silence, she whispered, "Nari." He didn't move. He just nodded, repeating it gently. "Nari." He said it like it meant something, like it belonged to her, like it mattered, and just like that, her name returned. She stepped out slowly, her bare feet cold against the stone. She knelt by the broth, picked it up with shaking hands and sipped. The warmth filled her chest like a soft fire. Her eyes met his again, and for the first time, she didn't feel like prey. She felt seen. He looked away to give her space. No questions, no pressure, just quiet company. She sat across from him, both of them near the same fire, 2 strangers under a broken sky. But the silence between them was different now. It wasn't empty, it was peaceful. She pointed to the stars, tracing one with her thin finger. "That one," she said quietly. "My nest used to be near that star." He followed her finger and nodded. "You came far," he said. She gave a tiny nod. "Too far," she whispered. For a while they said nothing else. The fire crackled and the market stayed asleep. But inside her, something had changed. She was still dirty, still small, still broken, but someone had said her name. Someone had listened. Cade stood up slowly, stretching his arms. He didn't ask to touch her or offer pity. He simply said, "Good night, Nari," then walked away into the shadows, leaving her by the fire. She watched him go, her hand still wrapped around the cup, Her name echoed in her ears, soft and full of meaning. She whispered it to herself once more. Nari. It felt strange, but it also felt real. And for the first time since she'd been thrown into this cruel world, she remembered who she was. Not trash, not beast. She was Nari. And someone finally knew. The next day began like the others, loud, dusty, and full of angry voices. The market stalls opened early, merchants yelling prices, buyers pointing at cages, but Nari didn't stay hidden like before. She sat beside the crate where the fire had been the night before. Her small hands still held the cloth Kate had given her, folded neatly. She was still afraid, still quiet, but something inside her had changed. She wasn't just surviving now, she was waiting. And just as the sun rose over the stone towers, he appeared again. Cade walked through the crowd with steady steps. He didn't look like a warrior, but he didn't move like prey either. His eyes were calm but sharp, scanning the market until they landed on her. When he saw Nari sitting upright, not hiding, he gave the smallest smile. To her, it felt like sunlight touching her chest, but not everyone liked what they saw. From the far end of the market, a heavy figure began walking their way. His boots slammed the stone with every step. Armor clanked on his chest and shoulders, gray and thick like rock. He was a Zovak guard, taller than most, with skin like cracked granite and eyes like coal. His name was Drogar, and everyone feared him. Cade didn't flinch when the guard stopped in front of him. Drogar looked from the human to the girl, then back again. His voice was deep, full of gravel. You feeding the market's trash now, human? Cade didn't answer right away. He stayed calm, eyes locked on the guard. She's not trash, he said quietly. She has a name. Drogar scoffed, his lip curling like stone breaking. She's unclaimed, he growled, which means she's property of the block. She doesn't belong to you, Cade replied, voice steady. The crowd nearby had gone silent. Traders leaned out of their stalls, curious. Slaves peeked from behind bars, eyes wide. Drogar stepped closer, his shadow covering both Cade and Nari. Walk away, outsider, he said, or next time I break your legs. He didn't shout, but his voice rumbled with warning. You're in Zenthar now, not Earth. Cade didn't step back, but he didn't fight either. He simply said, I'll walk when I choose. Drogar stared at him for another long second, then turned to Nari. Back in your hole, runt, he snarled. But this time Nari didn't crawl away. She stayed where she was, eyes lowered but unmoving. The guard snorted and stomped off, angry but not stupid. He could hurt them, but not here, not yet. After Drogar left, Cade sat beside Nari, a small distance between them. She didn't speak, but she leaned a little closer. You shouldn't talk to guards like that, she whispered. I know, he replied, but I couldn't let him talk to you like that. She looked at him, surprised. No one had ever defended her. Not with words, not with fists, not with silence. She didn't understand this man, but she wanted to. That night, she didn't sleep on the cold floor. Cade had brought an old mat, worn but soft, and laid it beside the crate. He didn't ask her to come closer, didn't touch her, but when she curled up near the edge of the mat, he shifted slightly, making room. The stone was still cold, but it didn't feel as cruel. The world was still dangerous, but she didn't feel alone. And above them, the stars watched in silence, just like they had for 16 nights. But now, something had changed. The ground was still hard, but her heart was slowly, carefully, becoming soft again. The wind blew colder on the 17th night, the kind of wind that slipped under clothes and settled in bones. Nari sat beside the crate again, her arms wrapped around her knees. She watched the marketplace slowly empty, the fires go out one by one, but in her corner, a different kind of warmth waited, not from a torch or a heater, but from him, Cade, the human who still hadn't gone away. He arrived as the moons began to rise. This time, he carried more than food. He had sticks, old wires, and a small fire starter in his bag. She watched curiously as he knelt down and began to build something. With slow, practiced hands, he arranged the sticks and made a ring of broken stones. Then he struck the flint, once, twice, until a spark jumped, a flame flickered, then caught, and in seconds the fire was real. Nari flinched at first. Fire had always meant pain to her kind, branding, punishment, destruction. But this flame didn't burn her. It warmed her cheeks, lit up her face, and made her shiver in a strange new way. Cade noticed her stiff shoulders. "It's safe," he said softly. "Just heat, no harm." She didn't answer, but she didn't move away either. He unwrapped a bundle of protein sticks and placed them on a flat stone near the flame. Soon the smell filled the air, rich, savory, and real. Her stomach growled before she could stop it. He handed her one of the roasted sticks without a word. She took it slowly, her hands trembling. It was warm and greasy and perfect. She bit into it and almost cried, not just because of the taste, but because someone had cooked for her. They sat like that for a while, silent, eating, breathing in the warmth. The fire cracked gently, the flames reflecting in her eyes. Then she looked at him and asked, "Why do you help me?" He stared into the fire for a long moment. "Because no one else does," he replied. "That's not a reason," she said quiet. Cade turned his head and met her gaze. "It's the only one I have." She looked down at her hands, the food half-eaten in her lap. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I didn't need to," he answered. "I saw you, and that was enough." Her throat tightened. People had seen her before, seen her starve, seen her beaten, seen her thrown out like trash, but they had never seen her. She looked back at the fire, unsure what to say. "I used to fear flames," she said slowly. "They were used to hurt us," Cade nodded. "Flames can destroy, yes," he said, "but they can also cook food, give light, keep us alive. It depends on who's holding the fire." She blinked at him, those words sinking deep. He wasn't just offering food or warmth, he was showing her a different world, one where kindness wasn't a trick, one where she didn't have to hide. He reached into his pack and pulled out something small. It was a tiny stone charm shaped like a bird. He placed it near the fire, not pushing it toward her, just leaving it there. "My sister used to wear that," he said. "She said it kept away fear. She died in a storm 3 years ago." Nari didn't speak, but her fingers reached toward the charm. She touched it softly, like it might vanish. Then she looked at him. "I'll keep it safe," she whispered. He gave her a small nod and leaned back against the crate. The fire danced between them, not just in light, but in meaning. That night, Nari didn't curl up far from him. She lay a little closer, the fire between them, her eyes closed slower, her breath came steadier, and for the first time since her world fell apart, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could trust the warmth. The fire was still burning low when Nari opened her eyes. Soft ash floated in the air, glowing gently under the first rays of morning. She had not moved much during the night. She had slept lightly, but she had slept. And beside her, the human named Cade still rested, his back against the crate, arms crossed, breathing steady. For a moment, Nari just watched him. She didn't understand why he stayed, why he gave food, warmth, and now silence. Not the dangerous kind, but the soft kind. It had been years since someone sat beside her without asking something in return. No command, no threat, no chain, just presence. She didn't want to speak, but her heart was heavy, too full, like it would break if she stayed quiet. And Cade, without opening his eyes, said gently, "I'm listening." She didn't ask how he knew. She just looked into the fire and began. "My people come from the dust caves, far below the cliffs of Morrow. We live in quiet, in the shadows. We do not fight. I was the youngest of 4, she said, her voice thin. My parents sold woven shells. My brothers caught sand crabs." She stopped, swallowing the lump in her throat. "One day, ships came from above," she continued. "They said our world had rare minerals. They said they would trade, bring tools, medicines, protection. But they lied." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "They came back with soldiers, not traders. They burned our homes, broke our nets, crushed our caves. They took us, those small enough to carry. I never saw my parents again." Cade opened his eyes now, but he didn't interrupt. Neri kept speaking, each word a sharp blade leaving her chest. "They sold me twice, then once more. The last trader threw me away because I got sick. I begged him not to leave me in the street, but he said I wasn't even worth feeding." She looked down at her hands, skin dry, nails cracked, fingers thin like twigs. "I didn't cry anymore after that," she whispered. "I just stopped being alive." The fire popped softly, and Cade reached beside him. He didn't touch her. He held something out, a small fruit, wrapped in cloth, She took it with careful hands, her eyes still glassy. "Thank you," she said, almost too quiet to hear. He finally spoke again. "I lost people too," he said, voice low. "My brother was taken during a raid on a mining outpost. I never found him. I know what silence can do. It can kill something inside you." She nodded, holding the fruit tightly. "I don't want to be silent anymore," she said, "but I don't know how to speak." "Then speak to the fire," he replied. "It doesn't judge, it only listens." She smiled, just a little. A weak, broken smile, but real. She turned back to the flames and whispered, "My name is Nari. I survived 16 nights alone, but now I'm not alone." Cade nodded slowly. "You're not," he said. That night she didn't sleep far from the fire. She lay closer, her head resting on the soft cloth he had given her, and even though her body still ached and her past still haunted her, she felt something new, a tiny thread of peace. The past could not be erased, but maybe it didn't have to control the future, and maybe someone like her, broken and cast aside, still had worth in someone's eyes. The stars blinked over the market, cold and distant. Nari slept peacefully beside the fading fire, her head on the folded cloth Cade had given. For the first time, her dreams were not full of screams. She dreamed of her old nest, of soft shells and warm hands. But peace on Zenthar was fragile, and in the shadows danger moved again. The guard, Drogar, had been watching. He had seen Cade feed her, protect her, share his fire, and that made him angry. To him, a slave girl lying beside a human was a problem, a question of control. So that night, while Cade stepped away to refill his water flask, Drogar made his move. Heavy boots slammed near the fire. Nari woke with a gasp as strong arms grabbed her. She screamed and kicked, but he was too strong. "You forgot your place, runt," Drogar growled. "You think kindness makes you free?" She clawed at his arms, but he threw her over his shoulder like a sack. People in nearby stalls looked away, too scared to help. She screamed for Cade, her voice echoing through the dark market. But Cade was too far. Drogar dragged her back to the stone compound at the edge of the trading zone. There, the old cages waited, rusted bars and iron locks. He threw her inside, slammed the gate, and locked it with a heavy key. She fell hard onto the cold floor, her breath knocked out of her. "Your property," he said, his voice full of venom. "You forgot that." She pulled herself up slowly, holding her side. The cage was too small to stand, too tight to stretch, and just like that the pain returned. The past, the cold, the chains, all of it. But she didn't cry. She only whispered one word, "Cade." And then he came. The guards at the compound door shouted when they saw him, but Cade didn't stop. His face was hard, his steps quick and full of purpose. When Drogar stepped into his path, Cade didn't speak. He punched him, once, sharp and clean. The giant guard staggered backward, stunned. No one had dared strike him before. Cade stood between Nari's cage and the others. "I'm taking her," he said. "She's not for sale," barked another guard, drawing a baton. "She doesn't belong to anyone now," Cade replied. And then he moved, fast, like a soldier, not a traveler. He ducked, twisted, disarmed the first guard in seconds. He fought not to kill, but to stop, to protect, to rescue. The crowd outside began to gather. Whispers spread. The human fights for the runt. Is she his sister? No, she's just no one. But Cade didn't care about their words. He found the key on Drogar's belt, unlocked the cage, and pulled Nari gently into his arms. She gasped, clung to him, her face buried in his chest. He whispered, "You're safe now." They ran, moving through alleys, past crates and fences. Behind them, voices shouted, weapons clanged, but they didn't stop. He had a plan, a hidden path, and a fast hoverbike waiting near the hill edge. As they sped into the night, the lights of the market shrank behind them. Nari held on tight, her heart pounding, not from fear but from something else. Someone had come for her, fought for her, carried her out of chains. And as the cold wind rushed past her face, she didn't feel small anymore. She felt alive. The hoverbike raced across the dark plains of Zenthar. Its engine hummed low, steady, cutting through the night wind. Cade kept his eyes on the horizon, hands firm on the controls. Behind him, Nari held on tightly, her arms around his waist. Her heart still raced. Not from fear, but from disbelief. She had been taken, locked up like trash. But he came. He came through guards, threats, and metal cages. Just for her. No one had ever done that before. They passed old ruins and cracked rocks. No signs of life. Only open land and broken moons above. The stars were quiet witnesses to their escape. And Nari still hadn't spoken. She didn't know what to say. Cade slowed the bike as they neared a rocky ridge. Hidden below was a narrow canyon, dark and quiet. He guided the bike down, parking it under a stone arch. Then he turned to her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice calm. She shook her head, but her lip trembled. I thought you wouldn't come," she whispered. Cade looked into her eyes. "I said you weren't alone anymore," he replied. "I meant it." She sat down on a flat rock, hands gripping the edge. Her body ached, her arms were sore from struggling. But inside, something stronger than pain burned, something new, something terrifying. She was beginning to believe him. He opened a small pack and handed her water and dried fruit. "You need strength," he said. Nari took it slowly, chewing in silence. "I don't understand you," she said softly. "Why do you care?" Cade sat beside her, his face serious. "I've seen people treated like nothing," he said. "On a mining world, I watched a child die in chains because no one helped. I swore I'd never walk past someone like that again." She looked down at her feet. "They all said I was worthless," she murmured. "Small, weak, broken." He leaned closer. "Then they were all blind." Her throat tightened, tears building. She wiped them quickly, but he noticed still. He didn't say a word. He let her cry, because sometimes silence is stronger than any comfort. After a long pause, Nari asked, "What happens now?" Cade leaned back, looking up at the stars. "There's a village on a green moon," he said. "It's quiet, far from this place. They won't hurt you there." She blinked, trying to imagine a place without guards, cages, or screams. She couldn't, not yet. But the way he spoke, it made her want to try. "Will you stay there too?" she asked, her voice small. He turned to her. "For a while," he said, "if you want me to." She didn't answer with words. She simply nodded and leaned her head against his shoulder. It was the first time she had chosen to touch someone. Not out of fear, not for safety, just because she wanted to. They stayed like that until the wind grew soft, until the moons climbed high. Two travelers in hiding, one broken, one healing, both carrying pain, but also carrying each other. That night, Nari slept beside him under a blanket he brought. The ground was still rough, but his presence made it soft. Her dreams were lighter, her breath steady, and before she closed her eyes, she whispered, "I'm not nothing." And Cade, already half asleep, replied, "No, Nari, you never were." The shuttle ride to the green moon took just under an hour, but to Nari, it felt like crossing into another world. She had never seen so much green in one place. Tall trees swayed in the wind, their leaves glowing faintly under soft sunlight. Birds sang, rivers flowed, and the air smelled clean, not of metal or dust. Cade walked beside her on the dirt path that led toward the village. He didn't rush her, didn't talk too much. He just let her look, breathe, and feel. The villagers were quiet but not unkind. Most were humans. A few were gentle alien species she didn't recognize. They looked at Nari with curiosity, not fear or disgust. She stayed close to Cade, holding the edge of his coat like a child afraid to be lost again. He introduced her to a kind woman named Lyra, who nodded and said softly, "You're safe here." They reached a small house on the edge of the village, made of stone and wood, with vines growing around the window frames. It had one door, 2 rooms, and no locks. Inside, the air was warm, the floor was smooth. There were no cages, no chains, no shouting, just silence. The peaceful kind. Cade showed her around slowly. "This is the kitchen," he said, pointing. "This is where you sleep." He opened a door to a small room filled with sunlight. In the corner was a bed, soft, clean, and covered with light blankets. Nari stared at it like it was magic. "I don't have to sleep on the floor?" she asked in disbelief. Cade smiled gently. "Not anymore." She stepped inside and touched the edge of the blanket. It felt like clouds. Her hands trembled as she sat down, her legs unsure if they should relax. She looked at him with wide eyes. Can I really sleep here? He nodded. As long as you want. That night, the village lights dimmed as stars came out. Cade prepared food, simple soup and bread. They sat at the table, and she ate slowly, still adjusting to this new world. Do people live like this all the time, she asked. Some do, he replied. Some never get the chance. After dinner, she returned to her room. She stood by the bed for a long time, unsure what to do. Then carefully, she climbed in, the blanket wrapped around her like a promise. Her body tensed at first, unused to comfort, but slowly, her muscles relaxed. Cade stood in the doorway, making sure she had everything she needed. I'll be in the next room, he said softly. If you need anything, just call me. She looked at him, then at the soft pillow under her head. Why do you keep helping me? She whispered. He paused, then said, because no one should have to sleep on cold stone for 16 nights. She blinked fast, her chest heavy. And the 17th night? Cade smiled gently. The 17th night should always be different. She nodded slowly. As he left the room, she whispered one more thing. Good night, Cade. From behind the door, she heard his voice. Good night, Nari. She closed her eyes, the blanket pulled up to her chin. No cold floor, no pain in her bones, no fear of being dragged away. Only warmth and silence and rest. Her breathing slowed, her heart beat gently. And before she drifted off, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Not from sadness, but from something she was still learning to name, peace. The night was quiet on the green moon. No shouting, no guards, no metal boots in the dirt. Only the sound of wind moving through tall leaves, and the soft rhythm of breath coming from a small room with an open window. Nari lay in the soft bed, eyes half open, staring at the wooden ceiling. It still felt like a dream. 16 nights of stone floors, hunger and fear had trained her body not to trust comfort. But now, on the 17th night, there was warmth under her, a real blanket over her shoulders, a full belly, and silence that didn't feel cold. She sat up slowly, brushing her hand across the blanket again. Still soft, still real. She slipped out of bed quietly, bare feet touching smooth wood instead of sharp stone. The floor didn't hurt her. She walked to the doorway, hesitating just a moment before peeking into the other room. Cade was there, sitting by the window, watching the stars. He looked calm, like someone who had carried weight for too long and finally set it down. She stood there in silence for a moment, unsure what to say. Then he turned and saw her. Can't sleep? He asked gently. She shook her head. Not used to this, she said. I keep thinking I'll wake up back in that cage. Cade leaned back in the chair, motioning for her to sit near the fireplace. She sat cross-legged on the mat, her eyes glowing in the firelight. He tossed a small log into the fire and let it crackle. No cages here, he said. No chains, no guards. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked, What now? He shrugged softly. Whatever you want. You can stay here, or come with me to other worlds. You choose. Tears filled her eyes, but she held them back. All her life, others had chosen for her, where she slept, what she ate, where she was sent. This was the first time someone said you choose. I want to stay with you, she said quietly. Not because I have tied you to it. Oh, but because I feel safe. Cade gave her a small smile. Then that's what we do, he said. We stay. She moved closer to the fire, pulling her knees to her chest. I still remember every night I spent on the stone floor, she whispered. My back hurt, my skin bled, my heart felt empty. But now, I don't feel broken. You were never broken, Nari, Cade said softly. You were just surviving in a world that didn't deserve your strength. She looked at the flame, thinking of the first night he lit a fire for her, how she had feared it, and now, how she loved it. It had become a symbol of something new, not pain, but hope. She looked up at him again. Will you stay by the fire tonight? He nodded once. Of course. She brought her pillow and blanket from the bed and lay beside the fire, not on stone, not in fear, but in peace. Her eyes closed slowly, her breath calm, and as she drifted off, she whispered one last thing. Thank you for the 17th night. Cade didn't reply right away. He watched her sleep, her face soft, No lines of pain. Then he whispered back, "You deserve every night after this too." Outside, the stars blinked again, but they no longer seemed cold, because in one small house, on one quiet moon, a girl who was once forgotten, now had warmth, safety, and a name that someone spoke with care. She was no longer just a survivor, she was home.